So, you know, when we're working in some patterns for these upper body, reaching with our props to lift us up, I find that if I sit on the edge of a bolster and I have something under my top rib spatially, I'm going to sit up to my short end of the bolster. If you're fairly long, you will be adding a block right on the short end, right in front of the bolster. So just kind of be prop prepared. So as we start to walk our feet towards our bolster, you want to get a feel of the knees positioning so they point slightly outwards. And so it's not such a modest pattern with the legs. They're not like trying to pull in. They have a position, kind of if my knees move out, I can feel my core swing a little forward and sway back, right? It's more of a swing. So as I persuade my spine vine to lower onto my bolster, I'm going to inch myself back so that I do have my belt and I do have a sandbag. And as I bring my head back onto that block, my block is up mid-height. Some of you will find the knees stop swaying immediately, and you have a fairly level concentration with just lining these things up so that your posture is poised for some beneficial circulation to your lungs. So I want you to have that sandbag, so it's either going to be at the top of the thighs, or it's going to be at your belly or your ribs where they intersect, okay? So I would encourage you at first to slide your feet, straighten out the legs, feel kind of the setting of the block or bolster under your rear. And sometimes you can notice if the feet spread a little bit outwards, that the knees don't have much choice to swing open as much, right? So feel your heels like they're scrubbing your mat a little bit. Do a little bit of a heel scrub. And then I find where I want my sand. I'm just gonna kind of sample when I breathe naturally where the sand feels comforting, okay? So wherever that might be. And the belly part is with the sand might be helpful for your diaphragmatic strengthening, okay? Now, you choose the setting of your sand, and then you keep it even on the body, whether it's ribs, belly, or front of the hip bones. And then as we strengthen the front of the spine, we take a belt, and as you hold on to your belt, open out your elbows and have that inner glancing of the directional motion of your arms and their situation with circulating the chest. So if I have my elbows in a strict bend, like I'm kind of tightening things up, then it might not be as useful for a restorative practice. So I'll spread the hands out farther, distant from each other on the belt, maybe to the point where my hands touch the floor. But it's pretty neat to experience the hands gradually touch down and then give yourself permission to widen at the upper chest and collarbones. And then you can start to self-study where in your body the holding patterns exist. You likely might have differences right to left side in the chest itself, especially at the connective tissue, the layer in the armpit, and then associate the connection of lowering your eyes, closing the eyes to connect to your slow and deep breath. Abdomen is resting. It's moving with each breath. Just setting your intention to be in your practice, in your home, kind of feeling that collective that are together for this practice. Right, so many kind of hearts slowing down, minds getting centered at the same time. Now you might use the opportunity to hold the belt to get a little strength, kind of reservation in the chest muscles, like you're pulling. So can you let go of the grip and then feel the association of the shoulder blades? They're their own association. The shoulder blade association. Feel those blades. And if you can actually feel that they're blade-like, right? If that's kind of a strange way of trying to move them back, if you feel like they kind of just push back as to muscle placements, right? There's a lot of associated muscles to get them back. But it's pretty common in postural work, right? It dictates a lot of the shoulders back, a little bit strict. So we're going to try to work with some of those phases of giving ourselves room to breathe and be pretty calm about it. So from the belt hold now, we're going to start to let the arms slide down by the sides, a little bit farther down. You might get a feeling of a blanket or some props in the pathway. And then we'll take a few more seconds with this setup here. If you want to change the leg placement, you could place the legs right next to each other, which is quite specific in poise. But I was going to start with our legs belted together, so it is kind of funny to bring them back in at the end of the pose. And then feel what happens in your lower back. Does it grip up? And is it a response in your stomach that it softens more when the feet come together? So I want you to feel as if your spine arches and you walk your feet in towards your seat. So you bend the knees, and once they kind of buckle into that, the natural pelvic arch occurs all the way up into the hip rim, into the rib rim. And it's like a better back feeling, better backs. Now slide the sand off. You'll need to bring along your block with you and your belt when you lower down. So what I'll encourage you to do is just kind of notice where is your belt and see if you can get it so that it's an easy reach since you're already on your back. If you're still there, we're all still here. We may be up or on our backs, but buckle up your belt and then just see how wide that loop is. Make a wide enough loop, you know, not quite a leg's length, but a big loop. And then put it to the side and hold your block if there is one under your head and gradually move your elbows a little bit out so that you can pick up your block, which has a brain on top, right? So can you feel that hold and feel the elbows wide and feel the connective line in the back? It should feel pretty bold in your neck muscles, your cervical vertebrae. Good. Now we're going to start to lower down. So I'm going to just slide my block to the side and slide down my bolster slide. And then as I come up, I'll use my hands, step my feet apart to push myself up. And then take a couple blocks in besides your legs and then start to set up for reclining cobbler's pose, okay? So what you'll need is a blanket on top of your bolster, okay? So you wanna get back the other blanket on the top of your bolster, keep the one below. If things got kind of smushed around and your bolster blanket set needs to get reconfigured, this is a good time to get that. And then let your sitting pattern move your knees open and lift them up by the block's height. Yeah, like the highest height you might use is mid. But you know, if you have your blocks low and that you like that sensation in your lower back to deeply stretch, you can try for that when you sit up. But take a moment here when you're sitting tall through spine. Awareness of the bolster right at the sacrum. Get everything kind of perfect lines of support, and then get your belt and let's put it over our head around our rib section, and then get a feel when that belt is in the ribs that you can kind of shift down, kind of tousle the belt back and forth like it's a towel right on your back, you know? So you get a feel of kind of the movement of skin. And then when you place your belt over the tops of your feet and your ankles, you have kind of a vision of what that's like with my feet. Like you don't have to kick your feet up like that, but it's kind of fun. So when you do, place the belt buckle near your hip and slide the belt low all the way down to the eyebrows of the buttocks, or maybe slightly lower. So it almost feels, you know, sometimes you can get flesh there, rear flesh, and the belt will kind of hold it. So there is some benefit to that, because then my belt's held. Kind of nice. I'll take that on. So I got my block mid-height. I'm going to surrender my spine vine back. It's the spine vine today. And as I lower back, now my ribs are not so splayed out. They're kind of central. And consider the hip kind of pit here. It's like a hip pit. You want to let your height of your head be in proportion so you have this line of energy all the way down to that hip pit. So this is calming for the abdominal organs. Any cramping, discomfort, this is the pose go to. So I take my sand and I'm going to place it from heart to tummy. You might decide that you want your sand across your feet. If you have many sandbags, you could put one on each inner thigh. And I like this pattern for the moment, as I want to work with a 3-part breath. So we have that sand weight, maybe farther into the center. You want to divvy it up pretty well. It'll lower down, the weight in the sand will go down to the belly because of your breathing. So don't give it too much weight at the bottom, because it will naturally flow. Reach your elbows open, like you're trying to make your elbows create a bit of a smile. Yeah, you don't have to lift the corners of your mouth, but you want to lift kind of the corners of the elbows. And then feel when the arms are with this situation of being kind of stirred up. Feel the flow of the arms moving back. And we'll go into interlacing our fingers at the roots and turn the palms to reach back behind you. Of course, where else would they go? They find their direction to stretch the wrists. And you can change the interlock of the fingers and kind of play a bit with just how you interlace your hands into your fingers and the input in your fingers when you do that. So workshop this one a little bit. Kind of interlace, turn the palms inside out, feature that reach back. Feel the specific heat into your upper shoulder. And then certainly we bring the arms now open or down by the sides of your mat. So you be the decider when the belly actually can reach its potential direction on the inhale downwards, abdomen expands. Good. Feel that capacity of balancing the breathing muscles. So you can feel either the lowering and the expansion of the stomach as you inhale. Exhalation, feel the belly transfer back in towards the spine. But how about noticing that it actually is the diaphragm that ascends up on the exhalation? So the interaction, the internal action is to massage the organs via having the sand and to calm the pelvic floor, kind of adjust where the organs are motioning in this position versus standing with the downward pull of gravity. Even if you make it this far, plus a couple minutes in the session, that is still going to be some self-care. Take a few more moments in this pose. Feel the shoulders center back. So the 3-part breath here is focusing on the breath in the belly, the ribs on the inhale, and the chest, all when the belly softens. And on the exhale, feel the belly naturally relax towards the spine and feel where there is almost this hug of the body from the breath. It's like your breath is kind of giving you this continuous supportive hug. It comes away, it leaves, and then it comes back. So as the mind gradually centers, stay here for a few more breaths, or maybe you lower your blocks down or out. If you do change the block height, go with both about the same time, and you want to feel that your feet push together so your body is kind of prepared, right? Because it's almost like a ceremony of change in the pelvis. So if I was to just slide my blocks out, it would be a bit of a catapult with the circulation in the pelvic floor. So I want to create that inner kind of grip, or you could say that core integration. So I keep my feet pushing in, and then I lift up my knees slightly. I slide my blocks down, and I'm going to slide them out so they're just below my knees, and feel that mild change in my inner thigh and my hip sockets. Just a moment though. And then we're going to slide the sand away. If you have a ball, get it. And then we'll take the belt, unbuckle. And then as you slide the belt off of your legs, can you feel the legs ease farther and easier, or do they rely on that belt for support? So this right hip, we're going to keep that inner leg rotating out, but we'll lift the left knee and the foot stays down as an anchor. And then as you can put your hands down with them by the hips. Now we're going to do some kind of interesting hand pressures for the core today. And some of them will be palm down beside your hips. Some will be like a fist, really close into your hips. I'm more of a palm person with that for my integration, but some people like to really effort, and maybe it works better with that type of pattern in the shoulder. So you're going to lift up that right foot, cross it to the left knee, and then use either the block or the ball besides the left thigh, and tilt your body weight into that ball or block and smush it, really smush in. Guide the object under the leg as close or far away from the upper outer thigh as it feels comfortable. In fact, you might even not do the still pose and move a little back and forth and just kind of feel the glide of the adductor into the hip socket, and you kind of rock a little side to side like these, like the right leg was in between two planes of glass. And you don't want the knee to pull towards you. You want to keep it open and on that same plane when you go side to side. Those that want to stop moving, hold the right knee with the left hand and draw that leg directionally towards you without too much force here. Just feel the awareness into that right hip. It might be kind of nice just to let the hip connect. And those that want to keep going back and forth at your leisure, enjoy that, kind of that warming up of the hips. Right arm is relaxed today for this one, so you can really contain the sensation around the hip and the back of the pelvis. Eyes are resting. Can you feel the pelvis arch? Right, how do you create arch? You've got a great opportunity with a bolster under your back that you can just gradually feel a little bit of a subtle arch through the spine, like you would in spine motions when we wave the spine in cat-cow. It's similar suggested movement, like you're moving your tailbone back. Just try that feel of holding onto the knee. Okay, mentally just scan where the emphasis is in your right hip. If you can kind of have a little brain cell that notices just about where in your hip you feel this. And then you'll let go of the knee. And if it changes the pressure in that piece of the hip, as you change sides, you have two choices. You can put the ball under the right buttock and massage that area, right? So I would lift up my rear and massage. You might move your blanket off under your head if you're not enjoying that extra little lift for your neck. You can always take that away. Just an FYI with that. And those of you that aren't massaging on the ball are going to get ready for the next side immediately. But you take that moment if you're massaging around your glute or a little bit of that outer piece of the right hip with a massage ball. Okay. And as I come down with my right foot and I switch, I'm going to try to balance on that ball for a moment and then see if I can get that left foot to cross up and over. You're not going to fall far if you fall off the ball anyway, so you can use your core. But if you have a ball under your right buttock, you will notice that it's a tiny thread of core activation. It's kind of neat when you do these really subtle core shifts, because it just, for most of us, there's some issues with those tissues, right? Whether they just are stagnant. It's kind of a main number one conversation. So as I move my right foot down, I'm going to move the ball right next to the outer right thigh, or take a block or a ball, and then just start to shift so the knees can go side to side. Remember, it's just two knees. You know, they have a different crossing relationship. One is pointed up, one's pointed out. So this could give you some good observation. Right? You can do a little bit of assessment with your knees on this kind of position. And then as I lean into the ball or block, I hold onto the right knee or the left knee, and I draw that leg towards me. It could be towards my shoulder. It could be across and downwards. And you might get carried away and get pretty excited about the stretch and need to back off. Right, back on off might be to move the ball a little closer in, so you really are smushing it. You know, even the block will work, or a towel, or one of the other, if you have another blanket around, or a little pillow, you can use that too. Or a toilet paper roll or something. There's all kinds of props around. Now with that hold of the knee, do you notice if the left arm is passive, if that's good, or you really crave getting the arm to swing back? You know, it is your practice, of course, in your home, so you can trend towards what feels good for you. But it's a pretty deep inner exploration in the class, that inner environment. Good. So before we exit out of this reclining stage, you have the choice, right? If your left glute, you feel similar area, you feel on the other side, just kind of spotlight that in your mind. It's probably a tiny bit different in the tissues, what guards, what's, you know, really prevalent in tension. And you can add that ball right to that left buttock, kind of where you feel that zone is the most stagnant, and then kind of roll onto it. So I would just lift and then put the ball under my rear. And you could uncross the feet, the legs for certain, and do this as well, massaging side to side. If this ain't anything you're doing with the ball, you can bring your seat down and windshield wiper the knees. Same thing, right? Similar zoning with the glutes and the side wave of the leg, the lateral rotators, okay? So with a few more moments, either squishing the massage ball under your left glute, right? Or a little bit on the outer side of the glute. And then as we get ready to go to our side, what we're going to motion is to get the waist so that the hips, like you're wagging your tail to the right when you're on your back. And you're actually gonna roll, feel if you can get your ribs to roll like you're going into a fetal position left. Ball goes away. And then come on up and we'll take our props. We're gonna turn them around a bit. And so I want you to pivot your bolster. Don't get into side stage quite yet. So see if you can kind of refrain from getting too eager to side stage yet. So we'll take our blankets in a quarter-ish fold. Yeah. And practice being okay with them being so-so. Sometimes they're not exactly the corners you want. So there it goes. I've got two blankies and they're a little bit lined up horizontal with the bolster, right? There's space between. So I've got my sand over on the other side, but what I'm gonna do is sit in the front and take my sandbag across my feet. Okay. It's not gonna be a sandbag competition with how you lift up your feet. No, that's not our option here. But what we'll do is we'll have the sand so my feet are about hips distance. If you have a wide enough sandbag and you have the handles on it, you'll probably start with holding on to the handles. And you would want to step your feet out as wide as they'll go for reasonable support with your sand. Lean back. Let's say you have no handles. You're going to use your belt. Okay, so if you don't have handles on your sandbag, you're going to use your belt at the base of the shin. Okay, and either is fine. Is a belt better? No, we're just leaning back. So it doesn't have to be both. So lean back, feel that sand kind of squish around on your tops of your feet. And then once you're leaning back, I want you to work your way of gently moving your chin so everything's in that same plane of leaning back, thighs separated, not gripping onto anything with the legs, but begin the process of keeping the ribs lifting up. So you're trying to get that inner lift with the ribs instead of slouching them down like chin tuck. So you're focusing on that moment. Okay, we could add block or ball to this, but we're gonna go pure balance. Now, once you remove the grip with your hands, you know, you're sort of left with some muscle control issues. So what we're gonna do is pull with our hands to bring ourselves back up to those few inches it takes to sit up tall. Inhale, belly soft, exhale, hollow the belly so you're in more of a C, like a cat pose. Inhale, pull yourself to sitting up. And exhale, C, chin towards chest. Now, as you pull yourself up this time, can you bring your arms forward? Your fingers will probably appreciate, no gripping. And then make that C shape back. Okay. Now this next time, arms up, lift them up. There you go. Good. Nice. And then come back on to that C. Okay. Now when you come back up center, take the sand from your feet to the left side and roll your weight into your left outer thigh and take a ball or block on the inside of that right leg. And then as you kind of surf on your side body into your bolster to side sage, you want to add some sand to this core piece. So we'll push the sand so that we can work on that, well, the lateral movement of the ribs, but it's really going to be that reaction of balancing the breathing muscles. And if you feel a little winded from doing that pulsing, and then suddenly your lungs have been kind of turned around, notice how you cope with it, with your breathing cycle. And then I find a block overhead is beginning to be useful. If I can use it, I'll take it on. And not necessarily to put the block low. You might like it high up. If you can gather your attention on how you're breathing all the way up into your throat, the windpipe, just kind of start to notice the breathing pathways in your body, especially from doing a core pose into a elongation of the sides and also the expansion of the ribs. Yeah. So once we're into this, you know, we're fairly well into the session now. Kind of notice, you know, your perspective, if you're centered and focusing, or if it's scatter moments now. You know, see if you can stay in that setting, if it's a good enough setting, and then let the body weight have additional weight on it so you can be in the process of centering first the physical and then the mental, right? It starts with the physical and then it gets in towards the brain and the breath, or the breath and the brain, or the breathing brain. If your head is holding up any way, any weight, use the props to support you. Just let them be there. Let your body be easy and comfortable. Good. A few more moments here. If your body is kind of swaying the ribs a little bit open towards the ceiling, that's fine. Like you're rolling a little on the back of your head. Now try that out where you do have the opportunity to roll a little bit on the back of your head, and you might sense a little more kind of peeling open on this right arm, and then that ladder down in the ribs. And it's such a unique opportunity. Even if you decide ever in a session, I try to do more rib work in the beginnings, but if you decide to be kind of in that part of the class for the most part, you know, we all shift our attention naturally, unless you're leading it. You know, really use the opportunity to climb to the ribs and feel the lateral movement of them, strengthening the breathing muscles, balancing the breathing muscles. And then this becomes a little bit of a twist, right, when you start to move into this phase, right? And that's clearly going to stimulate the function of the organs by alternately a little bit more squeezing and releasing. And when we come out of the position, fresh fluid flows in, right? So we want to get to that point where you feel like it's getting a little bit more intensive, which means sometimes grippier around the rib cage. Okay, so when we shift this time, what we're going to turn to is a cat-cow series of motions, real simple. And if you require something under your knees, you might add your blanket, that's fine. So we're going to lower down our upper arm, find how you can move the elbow wide, like you're kind of swinging at the hinge. It's a cool spatial arrangement when you're here because your shoulder tissue gradually moves back and it really can help the chest open. So when I slide my sand, and I turn, and I position myself on my hands, knees, and all those added benefits of movements, right? And so you could put your blanket under your knees if it's needed right now. Set the knees apart so that you feel your hands and knees while your arms and legs are about that same radius outwards. And then when you're broadening your back, you're actually scooping and moving your tail in. And then once your tail moves in, your head lowers down and chin tucks. Now alternate that movement of cat-cow, so arching and flexing. And feel when you are flexing the spine through cat. If coming back to dog pose just comes naturally to you, then practice what seems natural. For some of us, it might be toes under, lift up knees, just a few seconds, and then stretch the foot, come back down the knees, and arch the spine. Okay, so we'll do this for a few more rounds, cat-cow, or dog pose, into either cat pose or arching spine. You could do cat, and then push back to dog. Okay, feel the calves, maybe walk out the backs of the legs all the way through into the lower branch of the leg, into those good calves. Yeah, we'll revisit this after the next side stage. I wanted to get you a little bit of strength balance in your arms. So as you bend through the legs, and then you swing over to that second side sage, feel where the arm reaches through and the ball maybe, or a block inside the left leg, and then taking that sand and the reach. Now, you might get a feel that when you're reaching, that the detail in your ribs is unique from one side to the next. You might find that the ribs are a place you feel even more than you do like shoulders or hips or knees. I mean, it's just different, right? It's not that joint capsule. So, but you do have muscles between each of your ribs, and we're trying to hydrate those tissues. So if you tend to get a little bit out of breath with these side poses, notice, slow it down, give yourself a little more bulk under your ribs so you have more support. Maybe another blanket on top of your bolster will make it easier for you to open up your ribs. And that's why they make those big benches in the Iyengar method, right? Where you lay on them. They look like a piece of nice furniture yoga anyway. And you lay on them for just a few poses. So if you want to buy some furniture for a couple of yoga specific poses, you could, or just use what you got for everything. So we add that sand to either the cross horizontal or lengthwise. Be careful about your knees, right? If your left knee is not happy camping there, then you might bring it closer to the right leg. You might have them hugged into a fetal position if that feels better on your knee right now, okay? So I have that side as the focus. This feels actually really good. So I've got my knees close together. They're not perfectly flush, but they're close. And this position stretches my hip more. So play a bit with these opportunities, because before you know it, they're gone. Okay, they're forever home practice, you think, just no. But it's good that we got to this point, huh? So where you find that you can do this at home. So when you have the side reach, notice where the sand is on the side or in towards the tummy or back on the side of the spine further. Get comfortable with that for a good 30 more seconds. And inhale, fill the lungs. And exhale, let it go. Let your head be where you're okay with it. It doesn't need to be on the back of your skull, on the blanket. It could be on the side. It's so important to find what's comfortable. And I can't see exactly where you're working with it, so it's really, you get some of these landmarks from the screen and the commentary. And as we seem to follow pretty good with just that, you know, noticing that you're using some visualization, some memory. Your memory card is coming in handy these days when you're even in this practice. Now with that left arm flows open, right? So you have that reach. My left leg is to my right leg now. Yours might be back. Make it comfortable. Make it connected to your ribs, though. That's the important part here. Connected to the ribs. Okay. Now we've done the side layer. Now we're going to try to feel the composition of the front, which is where you would point to if you were asked where your ribs were, likely. And then the back, thick back ribs. Okay, so rotate to your right, so you're gonna kind of roll in and we'll come back to that table, but we're gonna move a blanket now under our knees. And you'll also want your bolster. So now I know some of your screen is probably this direction. I don't know exactly where, we didn't have a whole screen commentary where we were putting them, but I am turning us kind of to the back of the mat. So take my apology now if that's frustrating your screen watch, but I'll be very clear with the layout of what we're doing. So what you'll do is you'll take your bolster to the back, okay? You want your blanket extra so it's kind of anywhere on the side for now. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put on my bolster so I have more height for my arms. I mentioned we're doing the rib stuff, the breathing. So what we'll take is our arms are forward. Now you could have a block or a sandbag under your forehead. So it doesn't require you to have that, but you could even have that ball. Then you have all these dots, these little tattooed in dots from the ball. It'll be kind of interesting. This is a real secure one though, with the block or a sandbag under your forehead. Okay, so keep that reach of the arms. And can you have the hands so that they're far open, okay? So keep in mind, if you were had your elbows out like this is a common instructional layer in the school, is that we're working with this openness of the chest. But the reason I'm doing it face down is so that you can kind of relax your eyes, your face, maybe if you have glasses on, you're comfortable removing those, and get a feel here of your forehead on the block and the elbows as wide as they'll go. I know some of us, our arms are longer than this, so that's going to be right at the very edge. And then feel where those attach and just let them be. And now can you bring your hips back and feel a little bit of roundedness in your back, so you're straightening out and lengthening your spine, almost to cat pose. And just be. Now slide the hands down on the floor, closer to you from the bolster. And then as you bring your elbows out, you're gonna lift up and then stretch your knees towards each other and straighten out the legs, the front of the legs. They're not straight, right? They still have a bow shape, and lengthen into upward. And you know, this is like, it is sometimes called upward bow, isn't it? So I know, you hear these words often and all of a sudden you'll have an epiphany. Well, that is a bow. Okay. So when you're in this upward reach of the core, okay, try to maintain that, lengthen. Okay, now you're gonna feel that bow shape, and then when you hook your toes under, hook the toe rings under. And then as I push my elbows out, then I come back and lift up my knees and walk out the legs, alternate bending your knees, pedal through your feet, and then feel where your feet can span a little wider than hips distance. And then let the feet be pretty motionable. I always like the comment and make it the chewy feet. That's kind of a modern dance term, but you're really working on getting those feet a little more pliable all the way through. So space out the sense of your parallel stance with your feet. Breathe. Feel your head center down between the arms. Nod your head so there's really no tightening at the neck. And then we'll walk our feet towards the blanket and then our hands back to the blanket. And then we'll meet in forward bend with our toes lifting up on the blanket. So you're going to step up with your heels back off the other side. And you can either hold your elbows or let your arms reach and dangle down. But the depth in the calves here is a very felt sense. So noticing that sensation into your calves and your head down. Breathe slow. Feel that elevation of the hips, that sensation of the brain down. Now with that sensation of the calves, let's carefully motion. So our hands are a little in front of our blanket. We're all different lengths with arms, so it could be farther than that. But when you do walk your feet back off, and we're gonna bend the knees, and as you come up to about a halfway full stand up, bring your arms in front and feel your knees as they are angling forward. Well, that's critical, right? The knees are in that forward zone. Now, if your back is in a heavy round, can you push down to your feet? Okay, now if you're here and you touch your back, and you go, oh, it's rounding, I'm kind of scooping, I'm hunching. Then what you do is you add anything that's around you that you can get, a ball or a block, and put it between the knees. Usually that will kind of alert those lower back band of muscles to lengthen and extend spine extension versus this rounding. So whenever you notice yourself kind of slunching over, just put something between your knees. See if you can activate. So I feel a little bit more responsible when I have that support. When I don't, it's kind of it's a difficult whirlwind in my leg muscles to stay up. So we'll come all the way up. And as we reach our ribs up, I'm hoping you keep a focus of lifting your face up as well. And then as you lower down, let that ball go away or the block, and then let your head gently shift down and walk on forward to your bolster. And we're going to take an arm crisscross. So you're going to scoot your feet back, knees down. We'll put our block to the side, and as you move your blanket down in front of your bolster, so there's a bolster on the farthest end and the blanket is next to it. You'll put your right hand on the bolster and stretch your left arm under the right arm so it's a crossover, and turn your head to the right so the left side of your head is on the blanket, okay? So the dynamic is the right arm is up, forward, left arm crosses under, okay? And when your head turns to the right, you want the weight of your head to relax into the blanket, okay? So give it about 15 seconds. It's a bit of a shoulder kind of soaking. If it starts to drip, then it's time to get out. The shoulder drip. Okay, now feel that right hand prompt the change. So when you come up, you're going to let your spine round, and then left hand on top of bolster, right arm switches under the left, and head turns left as your right side of your head is on your blanket. Okay, so notice where the place of your head feels the most supportive. Now, as the arm strides under, it may surprise you the difference in the sides or something you weren't expecting on the side. You maybe have an idea of what's tighter just by being in your body for some years, but give them equal opportunities here. Now with that left hand pressing, you're going to come back, and this time move the blanket off to the side, turn the bolster straight underneath your core and lay on the bolster. So you're laying down, bolster is vertical, but straight underneath you so it lines up the front of your spine. And then place your elbows down to Sphinx Pose. Just in that change, it has different sound even when I listen to the voice. So notice your ribs when they're pressed into in this position, they're kind of fanned open. So I want you to get that awareness so that if the bolster is like pushing your chest, I want you to feel that the bolster is just under the ribs. So if it's not comfortable for your chest, you can always push your body kind of slither it a little farther forward on the bolster, and then really pitch your elbows down. They could go wider. They don't have to squeeze into the bolster. And then feel the elbows touching down all the way into the hands. And then manage this position so that you have that shape of the arch in the spine. And if you can let your eyes close and actually have the head in this natural arch, breathing. Okay, you're going to stretch your hands farther forward so your elbows are off of the floor. Right, good. That's nice. And then you're going to push into your hands to lift up the chest and start to integrate the upper back span, the upper lungs into the arms. I mean, that's the lung meridian, right? So we have to emphasize the movement in the arms here. It's got to have some sort of interaction with your heart rate, with your lungs pumping. Seems like we're laying around, but we do a little bit of restoration in many ways. Okay, now as you lower your ribs, I want you to keep as much of this height as you can. You just do the best you can. And then when your arms move back besides you, they kind of like reach them open like you're in water and you can actually reach around and reach back with the hands besides you. So you feel that layer of motion back with your fingers. So now we're in a baby back bend, which are not only called baby back bends, but they are what a baby would try for, is first this type of reach. So feel the tops of the feet on the ground. And at this point, I can tell an area I like to lay down pretty soon is my neck. Okay. So with all this back strength, feel the shoulder blades squeeze towards the spine, deep into the back ribs. Work on those sleepy muscles in the upper back that tend to round a lot forwards. Okay, and I'll give you one idea with this that you could do another time. If you're just laying on your bolster trying to find something to do, you can use your belt behind your back and take this position. So you're holding wide with the belt and kind of create some circulation and strength. There's benefit to using no belt, and then there's a lot with the belt. So lower down, hands on the floor to help you. And then what we'll do is we'll slide back. If you want to take a child's pose for a few seconds, this is a good option. So you're more in the knees wide, forehead on the bolster. If this is not a pose for you, those in child pose stay child for a little longer. Those that are ready to get to the next phase, you're going to move your bolster off to the side. You're going to take your blanket all the way, so we're turning to where we're used to looking at the screen. Blanket at the back of the mat, and then turn over. Bolsters in the front. Some of you still in child's pose, you'll find this when you get up. And then you're going to lie back and be a happy baby, because it's a similar position for the connection like child's pose, right? Just that you're not pushing into your knees that same way. So give a few moments. Hands hold the sides of the feet. The knees are splayed out. It's a rather awkward position for some, but you'll find that if you just land in it, the back is responsive and it's easy going on your spine. Okay, for a few more moments. Child's pose or happy baby. You either go from happy baby and then at some point you go to child's pose, which looks like a pose you're hiding in. Okay, now when we come around, all of us, let's meet on our backs. We're going to be using some blocks and maybe a belt. So have your belt nearby. Have your bolster at the foot of your mat, so your feet could be on the bolster when necessary. But I think I want to get this core band. I'm going to work a bit with 90 degree, 60, 40 angles and kind of get the core responsive. And then we'll do some revolved belly work, okay? Belly revolving work. So get a couple blocks. Place the blocks so they're next to your hips. Okay, so they're just like this. I'm laying on my back, my blocks are flat. I just pack them next to my hips. I got a belt. Might as well get my sandbag nearby because, you know, you never quite know when you're going to need a bag of sand in this class. Okay, should be called Sand Dog. Although it's sunny right now here. Okay. So we're going to bring both legs, and you might find when you pack in your blocks, kind of push them into the side and you swing your feet up, you know, spend a few moments with that straight leg sensation, moving a little away from you towards the bolster directionally and towards you. You know, let it be a little bit free with its motion. Yeah, there's quite a few patterns with these core poses that I find to be interesting when I follow them up with deep twists and hip work. So we'll take a short excursion with this. Now, when you pack in your blocks next to your hips, I want you to flex your feet, and then you're going to move your legs from 90 degrees, but keep the legs, if possible, straight. If you're really shaky, you can put your belt under your feet and hold your belt with your hands and do the same work, okay? Some of us are holding our blocks into the sides of our hips. So you can use a belt, or you can use your blocks pushing into the sides of your hips. Come back up to 90. If I kept that too long, I apologize. And then come back forward to maybe 60, maybe 40, and then straight back up. Okay, so let's take this a few more times at your own pace and feeling what's occurring with your back of your pelvis, your breathing. If it's all over the place, we'll define it in a few moments. Now, when you reach your feet a little forward, does your belly just kind of pooch, or does it really just lift and soften? And then when you move the legs back, it sinks back. I'm assuming that's what it's doing. So what I want you to try for is when you come back up with your legs straight up, is you're going to take a belt and you're going to bring that belt under your right foot, right feet only for this belt. And then as you hold on to that right foot, it's close to the center of the foot if that's comfortable for you. Some might like it closer to the ball so they can get more calf stretch. And then you're going to lower that left leg down. Okay, and go to about halfway of the lowering and stay with it. And try to keep the legs straight. You just do the best you can. It might bend, it might tremor. You do the best you can, and then enjoy bending the left knee, and then put the left foot on the bolster and let the left knee point open. So you're in half of Baddha Konasana, half of cobblers. If this block is uncomfortable, you can push it out a little farther under the leg. I like the influence of it that high. You could also put your ball there too, instead of the block. Okay, the ball is really nice to have underneath, right where the block is, but it can go a little closer into the actual connective tissue. So hold on to that belt with your hands as far up to the foot as you can go. And then you're going to take the belt together and move your right leg out. If you find it incredibly easy to hold your foot with your hand, you could do that too. And I like to use the belt so that I have a little more ease in my right shoulder. You know, if you can do that and you have a lot of suppleness in your back, then you can, but it's probably not for everybody. It's not in your range. And then feel where that inner thigh opens on the right leg. And if it's so intense with the block, I understand it could be a little bit of pressure. You could take it away. You could put your blanket there instead. I don't mind the intensity. Kind of reminds me where I'm leveling my pelvis. Okay. So now as you come back up, we're going to take the left hand to hold the belt and cross the right leg to the left. Now this is where you might get rid of your block under your left hip. I'm going to just leave it so I stay pretty balanced here. Not going past my edge at all. Come back up center, and then left foot comes up in the belt. Bring the right leg forward and hold on with both hands firmly onto that left leg, onto the foot, and then lower the right leg down. You're going to go about halfway and stop, and then maintain that with your head on your blanket. Breathe. It only helps. And I get a feel here when you're pulling with that hand, the hands bracing. And then as you bend that right knee, you might really enjoy that mini moment when the knee bends, the foot lands, and the knee moves open. Okay, we'll go right into it. Hold the belt, let the left leg swing open. We've got quite a bit to get through right now, so we're going to kind of speed up the process a bit. So feel where that left leg stretches out. And if the muscles are kind of co-balancing on both inner thighs, perfect. That's why we have the props under the legs. If you don't want to use them, you don't have to. You could push your blocks away and feel what happens without. If you don't use them, you could put your right hand in a fist right besides your rear, right where it's the soft tissue there. And then you can hold that with your fist underneath. That works pretty good too. It's a deeper stretch for some, not required. You can still stay blocked up. Okay. Now take that left leg up, cross it to the right, and block or no blocker ball. You can start playing with all the toys you have to use. A Nerf or something. Cross it over. Okay, now with that reach of that left leg, we're going to bring the thigh back up center. And then I want you to move the belt off, put the feet on the bolster, place a block in between the knees, and then reach your hands overhead and push into your feet to lift your hips up. Some of you might get rid of your blanket and be very content with that deeper inversion. So lift the hips, lift the hips. We are going to move towards inversions and then eventually legs up the wall or legs up the couch or bed, whatever you have at home to get your legs high up on. So try to get your hips up here. Okay. Tuck your other block under the pelvis. Mid height would be excellent. Short height is just fine. And I want you to let your spine center onto that block and then feel what energy you need to keep your hips lifted. Okay, and then take one more ounce of lifting your hips up without just the block, right? So you're a little higher than the block. You have risen above it, okay? Squeeze into the block between the knees. Keep that glute strength. And notice that. Now, if you lower back on your block, what goes away first is probably the grip in your buttocks. It just kind of relaxes, which is part of what we're working towards. So lift up your feet from the bolster, remove your block, and then stretch both feet up, okay? I don't know if it's a stretching foot feeling, but they just swing up. You could bring your blanket back in under your head. This might be a good moment for that. And then feel your feet. If it doesn't feel good, then don't do it. Let's say your chin is really tucked into your chest, then you don't want to blanket. You don't want to have more flexion in that neck. So feel where your legs are up and then take the feet apart. So you're in Upavista. So this would be Viparita Upavista Konasana. Now the main thing here is to keep the legs straight. So we're not trying to bend the legs pointing out nor in. So reach through your heels. So you have these legs in an angle. And try to maintain that. Now, if you get to the category where they kind of flop out a little bit more, but they bend, then it's not a good angle. So try to keep your heels reaching, right? You still are working the inner thigh tissues a lot to get here. And then as your hands are down, you're gonna move your legs back in, go slow. It only counts if you go slow. And then feel the legs in Viparita Karani for several moments without a lot of stirring. Just let your toes relax. Let the feet and the muscles that bind invert and reverse that flow of energy internally. Feel the belly lift and lower. Good. Now, when your legs are in this kind of nice, easygoing reverse flow in the legs, you'll notice that it affects, right, the circulatory system, also the respiratory changes the length of the exhale, quite simply here. So let's take this into a revolved belly pose. So we're gonna bend the knees and we're gonna lower down as the feet touch the bolster, push into them, lift your hips. And as you slide the block away, you're gonna lower your spine. And as that carries down that strength all the way through the spine into the legs, this is a good one to kind of bear your weight in your feet and feel that energy all the way up into the top of the back of the thigh. So this is fairly magnetized here. And then as your spine settles all the way. Good. Take your bolster and push it over with your feet to the right side of your mat and start to come into revolved belly. So this is a hip crossover, but what we're focusing into is the right leg straight-ish. And then as that left knee draws in, I'm actually trying to get my belly to be centered. And then as the left leg crosses to the bolster, I want my tummy to twist towards the left. So my right leg is passive on the bottom. My left leg is fairly curious on how to get over to the bolster. But maybe you don't have the bolster as far out as you might have in other days, so that your belly gets that twist. If you have a ball, you can place it right here at the sacrum. And if you have a sandbag, you're gonna lay that onto that exterior left side, okay? But if you have that ball, it can be really nice to access for the momentum of your posterior core because it's a revolved belly. It could be good and it could be something you better kind of fuss with and then decide yes or no. Up to you. Okay. So take that sand to that exterior left side, and then as the left leg crosses over, we let the right leg get a little bit more comfortable. And where is your twist coming? Is it the revolving position in your hip, or is it in your stomach at all? If it's mildly in your stomach and you can't quite get that to get active, you know, play a bit with turning your head to the left, reaching out through your left elbow, armpit, ribs. Feel the ribs, coax the belly to twist. And relax your breath. Yeah, twists are quite interesting for our breathing, rhythm, and the capacity. The respiratory capacity is stimulated. It stimulates the function of the lungs, but also that alternate squeezing and relaxing of the organs, not just the front belly, but the kidneys and the back. So let your eyes center in and give it a few more moments. Can you search for an area around the hip that you can bring focus towards releasing? Yeah, a few more moments. Okay, now when we switch through, you're going to layer the gentle knees to chest. So head turns center. Any object is left out from the sacrum. And then when you move, you might put your sand around the back of the legs, the hamstrings. You might put the sand on your shins. That's only if your knees are entirely unaffected in the history of their experience. They don't have any issues. That could be for some people. And so here you are in this knees to chest. Oh, so easy for my back and my pelvis, but nice for the lower back. You can tell this is like child pose in some ways in your back muscles. Okay, now when we switch sides, you'll need to get your bolster to the other direction. So how you finagle that could be pretty creative. You might use your hands, you might use your teeth. You might have a pup around that will move it for you, or he has. But now that you have your bolster over to the left at some point, unless you need to kick it over when you get out of this one, feel how the low back of the shelf of the pelvis is even. And you're gonna start to cross over. So you move your sand off, left leg down, right leg over towards the bolster. So this time I kind of went out of the focus of the revolved belly a little bit in the initial stage, but you will want to feel where your back of your shoulder blades are still getting centered behind you to the floor. And that might be another way to invite the front body to twist, right? So to have that kind of pinned there, the shoulder blades. So noticing that. Yeah, we're coming up on the final spinal here. So these deep layers of the thicker fascia, feel the right arm open, let your head either roll to the right or keeping it centered if that's most pleasant for your breathing. And if you're able to challenge your breathing a little bit, I would try to let your upper body all the way through your cervical vertebrae twist a little bit so your head turns a little right. So that's Even's challenging here into the windpipe. You can feel all these different pipes that you're working through to just keep them flowing and functioning. It's fairly simple, but it's important to recharge those areas. It's kind of like this is your, kind of like an oil change, this class. It's like you got to go through your 26 points or something. I can't remember what it is, but something like that. So when your head turns, you want to feel your left leg part of the position. If you bend your left leg, that is okay. It might be helpful for your revolved belly position. Now play with it a little bit. Feel the connectivity in the back muscles. Open the heart. Breathe. Take a few more moments. Now listening to your breath, right? Not to me as much as to that repetition. And the length of the exhale. And I think we'll keep it real simple, what we supply our body with energetically in this final phase, rather than too much stuff. Keep it real guided in the specifics. So we'll layer in some inversions here. So I want you to feel the idea with inversions and twists are they're working on the inner space of the body, both of them, right? Because they're both kind of, they're not like a witness thing that you, when you're learning them, right? You have to kind of get into them to guide yourself into being comfortable with them. Because everybody's twist ratio is a little different, and you likely can get some kind of subtleties in your twist that you don't necessarily see when you're observing how to, basically copy the pose. So when we start to slide any of our props away now, I want you to let your support be, and your legs are going to come back center. You're going to cross that right foot to the left knee, hold the back of the left thigh, and draw the left leg in towards your chest. So a simple reclining pigeon pose. Now, if there's any way that you can let this be a very complete support for your back, so the left leg could straighten out, it could bend, but noticing how you pull on the back of the left leg, if that only stretches one area of your hip or your lower back. So rocking side to side can be really nice on this one. And likely your left knee will bend a little further if you're rocking side to side. Maybe not. Maybe you like a kicking leg. Both of those could work. So get a feel of that actual rocking closer to your hip, right? See, I'm kind of rocking on my back, but I'm going to try to go over so I can feel a little bit of that side of the hip, and then switch the crossing, left foot now to right leg, and adjust your hands on the back of the right thigh and squeeze the legs, both of them, towards you. The right leg could kick up, you could rock, or you could stay still and feeling either the connectivity to your breath. I know rocking can take you away from that deeper focus sometimes. So when you move your knees, can you get a feel of your back, supply of circulation along your back? Okay, so we're going to take a forward bend before we get into legs up, which is sort of like a forward bend in the actual necessary muscles to be open in the legs. So when you come around from this pose right here, you get a choice. When you come up, you're going to use the back of the arms to pull and to bring yourself up to sitting. Now, we did a mild amount of core work before, but can you get your feet off the floor here? So you have a little bit of lift of your feet, and you're leaning back and using your biceps, right, to hold yourself forwards. Okay? And then feel your hands on the floor and take a blanket from behind you, slide it in so that your seat is on top of one, and then bring your feet so they're forward but out in that upavista, that wide angle. So what you'll want to have for that wide angle right now is now the blanket doesn't have to be this position. The real tradition for the blanket, if you're going to go right on to what it should be, is that you would have the blanket folded like this, and obviously same kind of fold, but you're going to sit on the corner. Right, you're going to sit on the corner so the blanket is not under the thighs. Yeah, does that make some sense? Yeah, so then you actually have to do more work to stretch the leg. So I have to sit on that corner. So it kind of peeks out right there when I look down. But I teach it all ways. You know, I've seen it in all directions, but in one specific school, it's that way only. So try it. If you don't like it, go back to what you did. See if it works for you. You might have to sit on 2 blankets, okay? The one reason I don't teach it all the time like that is oftentimes we'll teach upavista in a restorative cycle where we're sitting on a bolster and we don't have the choice to sit on just the corner. So then it doesn't work for the way I lead it. So when you lean forward, can you keep your feet, toes up, press down into the heels, stretch the toes back. Now, feel what it's like if you could reach to a foot and pull the toes back, right? One hand to one foot, one hand up to the bolster. And then you want to try to switch sides. So one hand to the foot. If it's like real hard to get your foot, don't spend energy on that one. But that definitely inspires each foot at a time. And then feel the foot lift, feel the toes up, the heels kind of scrub out on the floor. And then I'm trying to get my thighs to lift up, drop the kneecaps. And then if you feel more comfortable putting your bolster on the floor and holding that bolster, you could. I'm trying to prep our backs for legs up the wall. So this is my focus here, is the ribs are up versus ribs are down. So get a lot of that emphasis to that upper beam of the back. Okay, now take the right foot in, crossing, left foot in front of right foot, cross-legged, and then lean forward. Keep the blankie the same that you chose last moment. Definitely gets into the hip a little bit. And then change sides. So left foot in, right foot crosses in front of left. No sand needed, no blocks required. Lean forwards. Okay, now the body's been nicely flushed through, processing. We're going to take a moment here to get upside down. So what I want you to take is your bolster to a wall. Doesn't need to be a big wall space. If you have something like a painting on the wall above, you might want to have that down so you don't have it fall down on you. And then you'll have a blanket. Now, if you want to have a higher bolster, you could put a blanket on top of the bolster to get a little higher. That is an option. If the blanket seems to kind of slide down and get you frustrated, don't add that discouraging opportunity. Sand is unneeded, and if you don't have a wall space, you can put your legs up over the couch, a bed, a chair, anything to get them up higher than your bolster. So seat your tush next to the wall so the actual rear touches, and then you're going to swing the legs up, right? So I've got to get really close to my wall with my tush, really, really close, and that's better. Now, there's a few ways to get into this that you've probably been taught over time. Some are just crawling up to the wall and then try to get your legs up. And I like to get close to it and swing up, but I'm on a bolster. Now, the blanket on top does challenge me a little bit just to get up there. And it also challenges your lungs a little more. So I think as you mature, you might notice that some of these poses will start challenging your lungs differently. And it's worth the opportunity to get upside down and just be there. Just the timing is what's important for your inversions, having time in them. So that's why getting your feet up, your legs up to drain the fluid retention requires at least 5 minutes, maybe 15 for some. If your feet fall asleep entirely, you've gone too far. It's time to get out because it won't be doing that work any longer. You're done. So everyone's different. And some days it's different than other days as far as that circulatory experience. So as our cardiovascular system works, inversions, some people feel like it is a cardiovascular pose. And as I flex the feet, I want you to let your pelvis center on your bolster. Center your feet with sand or no sand, or your choose. And then let your arms either rest open or back to cactus or straight-ish behind you. If you decide you want to have a moment to put an eye pillow on or to gently putting your hands over your eyes, close the eyelids and feel the actual weight of your hands on your upper face and soothing the bones of the face. Not a big deep massage pressure, but just relaxing your hands on the face. Slide the hands gently to the sides. We'll all meet with our arms resting besides us or overhead. And feel the breath travel with a slower time. Right now, slow breath. Feeling the awareness that surrounds your lungs, your heart, your tummy. Maybe you have a little bit of hunger going on that you're about ready to nourish. So feel the nourishment from your practice. Sometimes that's good to have a little bit of that at the end. And breathe in the nourishment from today's practice. Breathe in the support from others that are practicing with you today. They're actually around the country. If your tailbone is touching and pressing, I want you to relax the grip in your tailbone. So instead of trying to almost tense that area, I want you to let it relax. The tail sometimes goes in a little differently that way. And if you're on a higher height, you will notice a little bit of that challenge with the breathing in the beginning, and then your lungs and actually your ribs have a little more flexibility from the shape, and it adjusts really nicely. The body has some intelligence all past the brain, huh? Now with a flexing feet position, start to bend through your knees, and I want you to let your feet move down and away from the wall. So if you have your sand, you're going to carefully remove that And then bring your feet either together, knees out at the wall, or your knees together towards your chest. You decide what is the most comfortable for your back muscles and your hips. And then feeling that peace, maybe a little sprinkling of peace in the body. Bring the knees into the chest and then roll to the side and let your hands bring you up. And find a sitting position. You're sitting on some height. Find the legs in a cross-legged, so you have the place of your feet, which is not your every time crossing. And then with that kind of buoyancy of the body on some height, let's bring the ribs so that they center up and the hands center in front of the ribs. Brain resting down towards the heart center. And surrendering here together. Let's breathe in and unite that awareness of breathing in wellness to yourself and to others. Inhale. And with exhalations, bowing into your heart. Namaste.